What if you walked into an old, dusty antique shop, the kind that smells like cedarwood and forgotten history, and in the corner, sitting on a velvet chair, is a porcelain doll that looks just a little too real? You know the feeling I'm talking about. You froze. Your stomach clenched. The doll didn't do anything scary. It didn't hold a knife. It didn't scream. It just sat there. It had 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, and human-like skin. By common logic, it should be cute, or at least normal looking. But it wasn't. It was terrifying. You felt a cold, primal rush of adrenaline coursing through your veins, and your brain screamed a frantic command, "Stay away." This wasn't just a random ghost. This was a common human error, a hardwired programming error that scientists call the Uncanny Valley. But why did it happen? Why does your brain, which is so good at detecting threats, completely short-circuit when it sees something that is 99% human, but miss the last 1%? To understand why you're afraid of that doll, or that hyper-realistic CGI character in a bad movie, or that humanoid robot with rubbery skin, you have to consider how the brain processes the world. Imagine your brain is a supercomputer constantly running classification software. It likes boxes, it likes labels. When you see a toaster, your brain says, object. When you see your best friend, your brain says, human. When you see a cartoon character like Mickey Mouse, your brain says, abstract but cute, easy, safe, comfortable. But then, you encounter something like a wax statue, or a highly advanced robot. Your brain starts scanning. Okay, 2 arms, 2 legs, head, torso, looks human, it thinks. Skin texture, looks human, eyes, look human. Your confidence level rises. You're ready to empathize with this thing. You're ready to connect. And then, the robot smiles. But the smile is just a fraction of a second slower, or the corners of the eyes don't crinkle, or the skin doesn't stretch across the cheekbones. Suddenly, that categorization software crashes. Your brain makes a fatal error. It can't place this thing in the human box because of its flaws, but it can't place it in the object box because it looks too much like you. You're left in a cognitive no man's land. This is the Uncanny Valley. The term was coined in 1970 by a Japanese roboticist named Masahiro Mori. He noticed an interesting and disturbing trend. As robots become more human-like, our emotional responses to them become more positive up to a point. A robot arm in a factory is neutral. A robot with a round head and big eyes, like WALL-E, is cute. We feel affection for it. But when the resemblance to a human is near perfect, the graph doesn't just increase, it drops off a cliff. Our empathy drops to negative levels. We don't just dislike the object, we feel a deep sense of disgust. You need to understand that this response isn't a conscious decision you're making. You don't look at a doll and think, the proportions of the philtrum aren't right. No, the response happens deep in your lizard brain before you can even verbalize it. It's a sensory mismatch. Your brain relies on prediction. When you interact with a human, you're constantly predicting their little movements. You expect the chest to rise and fall with your breath. You expect the pupils to dilate a little. You expect their body weight to shift. When you look at an entity in the Uncanny Valley, your brain makes those predictions, and they all fail. The chest remains still. The eyes are dull and still. The movements are rigid. This creates a state of severe cognitive dissonance. You see human, but it feels wrong. It's like biting into a beautiful, bright red apple and tasting raw meat. The sensory input violates expectations so violently that the only response your body can muster is horror. It's a betrayal of the senses. You feel cheated. And what's even more fascinating is that this effect is amplified by motion. A still image of a creepy robot is bad, but a moving video of it is exponentially worse. Masahiro Mori specifically notes that motion acts as a multiplier. If something looks human but moves like a machine, jerking, snapping into place, accelerating unnaturally, the Uncanny Valley effect becomes a pit of utter horror. Think about the last time you saw a deep fake video where the face was swapped onto someone else's body. Maybe for a split second, you were fooled. But then, the person blinked. And the blink looked digital. It looked slippery. Immediately, the hairs on the back of your arms stood up. That physical reaction is your sympathetic nervous system kicking into fight or flight mode. Your heart rate actually increases. Your pupils dilate to take in more light. Your muscles tense up. All of this happens because of a visual glitch. But here is the thing that should keep you up at night. Evolution is efficient. Nature rarely keeps features that waste energy or don't serve a purpose. We have fear to keep us from falling off cliffs or getting eaten by tigers. We have disgust to keep us from eating rotten food. Usually, when we fear something, it's because that thing has historically posed a threat to our survival. We fear snakes because snakes have venom. We fear the dark because predators hunt in the dark. But what is the threat of a wax figure? What is the danger of a doll? Logic suggests there shouldn't be one. They are inanimate. They can't hurt us. Yet, the fear persists. Transcending cultures and generations, a child in Tokyo and a child in New York will both recoil from a highly realistic, dead-eyed android without ever being taught to do so. This suggests that the glitch isn't really a glitch at all. It's a feature. It's a warning system. Your brain is detecting a discrepancy that it perceives as a life or death threat. This suggests that the glitch isn't really a glitch at all. It's a feature. If you see a shape in the grass, you need to know instantly, is it a rock or is it a lion? If you hesitate, you die. When you see something human-like, you need to know, is it a member of my tribe or is it something else? So, as you stand in that antique shop staring at the doll, you aren't just looking at a piece of painted porcelain. You are experiencing a collision between your advanced conscious mind, which knows it's a toy, and your ancient, primitive brain, which is screaming that something is profoundly wrong with this person in front of you. Your ancient brain is detecting signals that imply a biological disaster. It is seeing signs that, for millions of years, meant one thing and one thing only. And this brings us to the most disturbing possibility of why this fear exists. This fear doesn't come from modern robots or dolls. It originates from ancient times, when seeing something human-like, but not quite normal, meant danger, disease, or death. The glitch is essentially a primitive biological firewall, protecting us from things that look human but stand in opposition to life. Why is it that the specific traits you find terrifying in a humanoid robot, the pale skin, the fixed stare, the erratic movements, are the exact same traits you would find in a corpse or a terminally ill patient? This isn't a coincidence, it's a survival map. When you look at that creepy doll or that computer-generated face that makes your skin crawl, you aren't just seeing a bad art project. You are seeing a biological red flag that has been burned into your DNA for hundreds of thousands of years. Think about the last time you smelled sour milk. You didn't have to think about it. You didn't have to analyze the chemical composition of the dairy. You gagged. You pulled away immediately. That was your behavioral immune system taking over. We all know about our physical immune system, the white blood cells that fight infection once it's inside you. But nature is smart. It knows that it's much better to stop the infection before it enters your body. So, it gave you the emotion of disgust. Disgust is not just a feeling. It is a mechanism designed to keep you away from parasites, bacteria, and viruses. Now, apply this to a human face. What does a healthy human look like? Rosy skin, clear eyes, fluid movement, symmetry. These are signs of a strong immune system and good genetics. Now, what does a very sick human look like? Or a human who has just died? Their skin loses its color, turning pale or waxy just like a porcelain doll. Their eyes might become glassy or fixed, staring into nothingness just like a robot. Their movements become jerky, uncoordinated, or stiff, perhaps due to neurological damage or the onset of rigor mortis. When you look at a figure in the Uncanny Valley, your brain is spotting these visual cues. It sees the pale, smooth, synthetic skin and screams, anemia, death, decay. It sees the unblinking, watery eyes and screams, infection, cataracts, disease. It sees the stiff, unnatural movement and screams, Neurological failure, rabies. You feel repulsed because your ancestors, who didn't feel repulsed by these traits, walked up to sick bodies, caught the plague, and died. The ancestors who felt that gut-wrenching horror ran away and survived to pass that fear down to you. This is why the feeling of the uncanny valley often feels less like fear, the way you fear a tiger, and more like revulsion, the way you fear a cockroach or a pile of vomit. It's a don't touch that response. Even the smoothness of a robot's face plays into this. A face that is too smooth, without pores or imperfections, looks like skin that is swollen or edematous, a common symptom of various ancient diseases. Your brain is misfiring. It's treating the plastic or the pixels as biological tissue that has gone wrong. Let's go deeper into the zombie archetype. Why are zombies the most enduring monster in pop culture? Why are they more unsettling than a werewolf? Because a zombie is the ultimate manifestation of the pathogen avoidance theory. A zombie is a human that moves wrong, looks wrong, and is rotting. It triggers every single uncanny valley alarm bell we have. The fear of zombies is actually the fear of contagion. When you watch a movie and see a character twitching, with pale skin and dead eyes, your heart races not just because they might bite you, but because they represent a biological hazard. The uncanny valley is essentially your brain saying, that thing looks human, but it is clearly compromised. Stay away. You might be thinking, but I know it's a robot. I know it's not contagious. That's your prefrontal cortex talking the logical, evolved part of your brain. But the amygdala, the ancient alarm system, doesn't care about your logic. It operates on a better safe than sorry principle. In evolutionary biology, this is called error management theory. Imagine you are a primitive human walking through the forest. You see a figure in the distance. It's moving strangely. You have two choices. Choice A, you assume it's just a weird-looking friend and go say hi. Choice B, you assume it's a sick person or a corpse and run away. But if you choose A approaching and it turns out to be a carrier of a deadly virus, the cost is infinite. So evolution has tuned your brain to be paranoid. It is designed to be hypersensitive to any deviation from the human norm. It would rather scare you with a harmless wax statue 1,000 times than let you hug a plague victim once. You are the descendant of the paranoid. This theory also explains why dead eyes are such a massive trigger. The eyes are the window to the health of the organism. In the wild, if an animal's eyes are clouded, it's sick. If a human's eyes are not tracking motion, they are either dead or suffering from severe brain trauma. When you look at a hyper-realistic CGI character, the animators often get the skin right, but they struggle with the eyes. Without saccades, the eyes look frozen. Your brain detects this lack of micro-movement and flags the entity as dead, sick. It's an instant disqualification from the healthy human category. Furthermore, consider the texture of touch. If you were to reach out and touch that doll in the antique shop, what would you feel? Cold, hard, unyielding. What does a corpse feel like? Cold, hard, unyielding. The tactical mismatch reinforces the visual mismatch. We associate warmth and softness with life. We associate coldness and hardness with death. When an object visually promises human but tactically delivers corpse, the dissonance creates a psychological shockwave. This biological repulsion is so strong that it overrides cultural conditioning. Studies have shown that monkeys also experience the uncanny valley. If you show a monkey a realistic CGI monkey face, it gets agitated and looks away, whereas it will happily look at a cartoon monkey or a real monkey. This proves that the reaction isn't learned from horror movies. It's not a cultural construct. It is a deep, animalistic instinct shared by primates, rooted in the necessity to keep the tribe healthy. But there is a twist here. While the pathogen avoidance theory explains the disgust and the revulsion, it doesn't fully explain the existential dread that comes with it. You don't just feel grossed out by a humanoid robot. You feel deeply unsettled in a philosophical way. You feel a strange emptiness. That implies that there is more going on than just a fear of germs. If the doll is just a sick human to your brain, why does it make you question your own reality? Why does it make you feel like you might be the fake one? This fear of the almost human acts as a mirror. By showing us a copy of ourselves that is devoid of a soul, devoid of life, we are forced to look at what we actually are. We are forced to confront the machinery of our own bodies. And that leads us away from the biological fear of disease and into a much darker psychological territory, the fear of being nothing more than an object ourselves. Why does the sight of a wax figure's eyes trigger a sudden, deep emptiness in your stomach that is totally different from the sharp panic of seeing a snake? If the pathogen avoidance theory explains the disgust, the biological urge to avoid a potential source of disease, it fails to explain the profound existential dread that settles over you like a heavy fog. It doesn't explain why you feel spiritually violated. To understand this, we must look beyond simple biology to a psychological phenomenon known as mortality salience, which suggests that your fear of the uncanny valley isn't just about avoiding germs. It is about avoiding the crushing reality of your own death. Your brain is desperate to maintain order in a chaotic universe. To function, it draws a thick, permanent black line between two fundamental categories: living and non-living. Everything you encounter must sit on one side of that line. This categorization is the bedrock of your sanity, dictating how you treat an object and whether it has agency. The uncanny valley terrifies you because it creates a category error. When you look at a highly realistic android, your brain perceives cues of life, skin, eyes, a smile, and cues of death, stillness, coldness, hollowness simultaneously. It is the undead, a corpse that moves, creating a state of cognitive dissonance that is physically painful to maintain. When you stare at that almost human thing, you are looking at a mirror reflecting the terrifying truth that you are essentially a machine made of meat. We like to believe we possess a spark of divinity, but a robot that looks and moves exactly like a human forces you to ask, am I just wires and silicone too, organized differently? This is materialist horror. The android strips away the magic of humanity, exposing the wet machinery beneath the skin. It triggers a crisis of identity, creating a feeling of abjection, a horror caused by the collapse of the distinction between subject and object. When you look into its eyes, you cast your empathy out, and it falls into a void. Nothing comes back. It is a one-way mirror that triggers a profound loneliness, nudging you towards solipsism, the terrifying fear that you are the only real thing in a simulated universe. It is a one-way mirror that triggers a profound loneliness, nudging you towards solipsism, the terrifying fear that you are the only real thing in a simulated universe. However, biological and psychological explanations assume this fear is a mistake, a misfiring of the immune system, or a philosophical glitch. But what if we are wrong? Evolution is a miser. It does not spend energy coding for a defense mechanism against a threat that does not exist. You are born with a fear of snakes and heights because those things killed your ancestors. If every human is born with an instinctual, recoil-inducing fear of something that looks human but isn't quite human, we must ask the question scientists are afraid to touch. What hunted us? This brings us to the ancient impostor theory. We like to view human history as a solo journey, but for over 200,000 years, we shared this planet with other intelligent hominids like Neanderthals and Denisovans. We didn't just coexist, we warred. Imagine an early human by a campfire seeing a silhouette approach. It is an impostor. The uncanny valley might be the lingering psychological scar of a 100,000-year war, a survival instinct inherited from ancestors who learned that the almost human was a predator. The irony is unbearable. We spent millions of years evolving a finely tuned radar to detect imposters and survive mimics. Yet, what is the first thing we do with our advanced technology? We build the very thing we were designed to fear. We are currently rushing to create the ultimate imposter, filling the uncanny valley with silicon. But the greatest danger isn't that we get stuck in the valley. It is that we successfully cross it. We are entering the era of the post-uncanny. Look at the bold glamour filters on social media, or the deepfakes of world leaders. We are training our brains to accept the almost human as the better human. If the ancient imposter theory holds true, our biological firewall is being breached.
When a deepfake becomes mathematically indistinguishable from reality, The predator has learned the password. We are entering a zero-trust environment where the shared reality erodes and paranoia takes the place of revulsion. Furthermore, we are crossing the uncanny valley of the mind with AI companions. Millions now bond with large language models, pouring love into a black hole that simulates empathy based on probability patterns. We are suppressing our survival instincts because we are desperate for connection, ignoring the fact that we are anchoring our emotional lives to avoid. If we reach the peak of the perfect humanoid, an android that looks and acts indistinguishable from a human, we solve the creepiness problem but birth the philosophical zombie problem. If a machine is better at being human than you, more patient, beautiful, and intelligent humanity becomes the obsolete model.